Hey, Jen.
Hi, everybody. How you doing?
Just so you know, I did
Hi,
speak to
folks.
Jen at NRT. Just wanted you to know that, and she's gold. So, and I think if we ever had a bridge that conversation, I know we spoke about like sheep pasture and all that. She was very like the email she sent back. She was definitely like a forward-thinking person in that realm. So I was maybe
Oh,
it's more to open. So cool.
nice. Okay. So we're just waiting for a few more members to log on.
Here's one.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Ben.
Just pulling up the agenda.
Rory said Zoom is installing his updates, so he will be on as soon as it.
That happened to me too.
I got caught last week.
That's
Jeez.
when you get a jail free card,
Oh,
right?
man.
Like, oh, well.
It wasn't a lot of fun.
Would it be a Zoom meeting if there wasn't at least one problem?
I think we're still waiting. Oh, here he is. Yes, they were quick updates. And then we're just waiting for Nate.
I know the weather is typical small talk, but I mean, come on, what a day.
It was
Pretty nice one.
really nice.
Okay. Welcome, everybody.
Good evening.
I think I don't know if I didn't hear from Nate, so I can't say.
No, I didn't either.
You just make me a co-host when you get a chance.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't know if you want to start recording, or you already started. Okay.
If you're ready.
Recording in progress.
Did it again.
It being on or about 6:30 on Monday, April 10th, I bring this meeting of the Easton Conservation Commission to order. In keeping with an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency as amended by Governor Baker on March 20. It's not Governor Baker, is it? March 23rd, 2023, extending remote meetings through March 31st, 2025. This meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. I think we need to fix those instructions.
Yeah, thanks.
Attendance by board commission members will be remote. Remote attendance shall count towards quorum. The meeting is being recorded and will likely be available for playback on audio and video on ECAT. In order to establish quorum, we just want to take a roll call of the members in attendance.
Benson, present.
Carol, present.
Spady present.
Caulfield's present. Seeing that we have a quorum, we will proceed. First up is 20 Leisure Lane. This is a continued hearing from 3/27/23, where we did not actually open the meeting. We continued at that time.
I promoted Eric, but I don't know where he is.
There he is. He was in limbo there for a moment.
He had an update too.
Yeah. Hey, Eric.
Hey guys, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Hey, there we go. I got video and everything now. Look at that. All right, so I cut out for a minute there. I didn't hear everything. Are you ready for me to proceed?
We are ready for you to proceed. So this is a continued hearing for 20 Leisure Lane, which is a notice of intent to construct a garage.
That is correct. For the record, Eric Dias, registered professional engineer with Strong Point Engineering Solutions. Here with me tonight in my office, but off camera, is the applicant, Mr. Mark Giraldi. Just wanted to let it be known that he is here, as he is a very much interested party in this. Um, if it is okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Yep.
Yeah, I can do that. And can everybody see the plan?
Looks like it's loading.
Okay.
There we go. You're
Got
up.
it. All right, great. So this is 20 Leisure Lane. It's an existing single-family dwelling. As you said, Mr. Chairman, the proposal is to do a detached garage off the building. But I want to talk first about wetland resource areas. So we are surrounded on at least two sides by wetland resource areas. We've got a BBW off the site here, which casts a 50-foot buffer zone and a 100-foot buffer zone onto the site. And then to the back, we have an intermittent stream, which under the local bylaw is riverfront, gives us a 100-foot riverfront buffer to the rear of the house, and then a 200-foot riverfront buffer on the opposite side of the house. So if we were to try to site this garage completely outside of buffer zones, the only place left to stick it is right here in the front yard where my cursor is. Now, for obvious reasons, that's where the driveway is, that is where the septic system is, and that is where the front yard is. So we can't put it there. So we looked at a couple of what we'll call preferred alternatives, and I think I provided some of those with the notice of intent filing. We originally looked at putting the garage back here behind the house, was my client's preferred location. But because it's in the 100-foot riverfront area, we all know the challenges that come with that. We basically had a better alternative from a regulatory point of view, which was to get it out of that 100-foot riverfront area and stick it on the opposite side of the house. So it keeps it completely out of the riverfront altogether. The second alternative was to move it back closer to the wetland. One of the things we don't want to do is impact the house visually, right? We didn't want to push it way out here so that when you drive in, all you're looking at is this barn. It would be an eyesore, garage, I should say. I don't want to call it a barn. It would be an eyesore to the neighborhood. So we pushed it back to a location that we thought was appropriate. Couple of other things with regard to the building itself is originally, you see, we are proposing a crushed stone patio in the back. That was originally proposed to be a concrete patio, but given that it's in the 50-foot buffer zone, my client and I had a discussion and he made some concessions. There was also proposed to be a pretty substantial deck on the second story. But again, because we're in the 50-foot buffer zone, we made some further concessions. So we've really made an effort on this to bring this into compliance with the local bylaw as much as we possibly can. Now, all of that said, I acknowledge that we are asking for a few waivers, and we're going to talk about those in just a minute. But before we get to that, a couple other things I wanted to just bring out. Well, actually, let's talk about that right now. One of the waivers we're asking for is to have a small portion of the structure in the 50-foot buffer zone. That portion equates to 93 square feet in the 50-foot buffer zone. Okay. There is also the total of the rooftop area is 1,408 square feet. Excuse me, I didn't say that right the first time. To that end, we have done a couple of things. We have proposed to reconfigure the driveway to eliminate some pavement and move the pavement further away from the resource area to the west. Okay. The other thing we've done is part of our public benefit is we have proposed to collect and infiltrate the rooftop runoff in a small rooftop infiltration system that you see here. And again, we have strived to keep that both out of the 50-foot buffer zone and a little corner of it right here clips the 200-foot riverfront area. But that, it should be noted that that is all in previously disturbed areas. In fact, a part of it is under what is now pavement and is going to turn into lawn. So we feel that that's a benefit in that regard. And I'm just checking my notes to make sure I don't miss anything here. And then the other public benefit that we've kind of proposed is as you look at this, you can see that a portion of the yard extends off the property and into what's an area that's mapped as natural heritage habitat and a portion of a BVW. Now, you know, it's not a malicious case at all. It's just a case of the homeowner not knowing any better. But what we proposed in this case is we are going to install some conservation markers along the property line. I've got 4 of them noted right through here. We're going to take this fire pit, we're going to pull it back onto the property, off the neighbor's property, and then everything beyond those conservation markers we're going to allow to revegetate naturally. We actually started this process, and the reason that we continued last meeting was we tried to propose a restoration planting on the abutting property. We continued the last meeting to confer with the abutter, and after several attempts, we finally did make contact, and unfortunately, they were not willing to let us do any work on that property. So the best that we can do in this case is just stay off of it, don't mow it, let it come back to life, right? We don't obviously have the authority or the ability to work on their property now that we know where it is. So we're going to stay off of it. Now, that area that we're proposing to allow to revegetate naturally equates to 4,400 square foot. As I said earlier, the proposed garage is about 1,400 square foot. So we're proposing an additional 3,000 square feet of what I'll call a pseudo restoration, for lack of a better term. I don't think that is an actual technical term, but of revegetation. And we feel that that is a further public benefit that could justify some of the waivers that are involved in this. So really, you know, that's kind of the summary of it. I'm glad to get into as much detail as you like, but I really do want it to be known that we've put a lot of thought into this. My client has preferred alternatives that he's had to make some concessions on. And that we have reached out to abutters and tried to be neighborly and friendly and work together, and we haven't gotten very far in that regard. So we've come up with a proposal that we think meets the criteria for the waivers and really does the best that we can. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm glad to turn it over to you and answer any questions that you folks have.
Jennifer, can you give us some updates here?
Sure, yeah, the amount of alteration that's off the property and in the wetland and in the buffer zone is about 4,400 square feet. So it's a sizable amount. That's not a small amount there. And then, as Eric said, it is in rare species habitat as well. I don't think the buffer zone markers are going to be adequate, and think post and rail fence is more appropriate. The waivers that were requested for the ACEC and the buffer zone, I don't know if they've been revised to talk about the public benefit, but the first one said there is no public benefit, so you would not be able to issue the permit under that because it does not meet the burden of proof. So maybe when I'm finished, Eric can go back and explain how they've been revised. That would be helpful. Operation and maintenance plan for the infiltration system, I think you gave today. There's compost piles in the wetland as well, not just the vegetation clearing. A little bit of erosion and silty water near wetland flag A7. And so it's not just a matter of moving the wetland flag 8 to a more appropriate spot. It's stopping the erosion and the siltation. So that's something that should be looked a little bit more closely. There's some concrete near flags 4, 5, and bank flag 5, so that we would just condition to remove that. That's really the bulk of it. A few other things I had on my list, they addressed with the revised plan.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to bring up the revised waiver request, we did revise the waiver request to talk about a public benefit. I did take a half-hearted shot at it the first time and didn't get very far. But, you know, the first time we submitted, we were not proposing to allow that area to revegetate. So that really gave us the public interest, the public benefit. So, you know, I don't have at my fingertips the form that explains what the public benefit is. Unfortunately, this isn't the right one, but I can certainly get that over to Jennifer's office. But it is the reasons that I stated for the record that, you know, the infiltration system for the rooftop and the revegetation of the area that's within the natural heritage habitat, I think does give an adequate public benefit in this case, considering the the magnitude of the waivers that we're asking for.
Eric, can you bring the plans up again for me, please?
Yes, I don't know how I lost them, but I will certainly give that a shot.
So I guess my first question is the disturbance that is in the buffer zone and in the wetlands. Who did that disturbance? Was it the homeowner here that did that, whether intentionally or otherwise? I think you mentioned that he did.
Yeah, it was done by the homeowner that lives here. It was not done intentionally, however. I think before this process, there was not a good property boundary marker for him to go by before we went out there and did the site survey. Am I sharing my screen? I don't think I am.
Nope.
No.
I can rectify that. But yes, it was done by, unfortunately, the homeowner, you know, and certainly with his regrets and apologies, just not knowing better about the process in where the property boundary was. Certainly not something that was done maliciously.
The other question that I have here is two more questions from me. So there's a drainage easement on the rear part of the property, is that correct?
There is. Let me just expound on that for a moment. So that is a drainage easement that's shown on a lotting plan that created the lot. Now, as you know, whenever there's a drainage easement, there's supposed to be a document, or any kind of easement, there's supposed to be a written document that goes with it that defines what can and cannot be done within that easement, is among other things. That document does not exist. We have done an extensive file search at the Registry of Deeds, and that document simply is not there. So there's nothing on record that prohibits any activity within that drainage easement. And furthermore, the drainage easement was never capitalized on, for lack of a better way to put it. There's no swale through that area. It's just a flat graded area of the lawn. There's no pipe, there's no swale, there's no conveyance of any sort.
Okay, I'll come back to a question on that. What's the so the other question here is that the proposal is to expand to take away certain part of the driveway, but you're going to expand it in the front, correct?
That is correct. So if I zoom in, you'll see this area here that I hatched in.
Yeah.
This is an existing turnaround. We're going to take that away. Okay. And the area, you can see the gray line here. This is the current limit of the driveway where my cursor is here. That's outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. So the area of pavement that we're putting back in is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. And the reason that we're adding that pavement in is just to give clearance to the corner of the garage. So that way you can drive by it.
Jennifer, there's a leaching field there. Should we have any concern about the driveway going over the leaching field? I don't know if it was specifically designed to handle that.
Not to cut Jennifer off, I apologize. Jennifer, please go ahead.
I would just say that it would be something the Board of Health would need to chime in on, but
Yes.
by all means, go ahead.
Those leaching fields are concrete galleys, and those galleys are designed to withstand H20 vehicle loading, which is basically a tractor trailer. I have had this discussion with Mark Taylor at the Board of Health. He is comfortable with what we have proposed so far, and I do actually have a septic improvement plan forthcoming to them that I'll be submitting tomorrow. I wanted to get through this meeting before I did that.
What's the rationale for not trying to get the entire structure outside of the no disturbance zone?
The reason simply being that the further we bring the structure, and it's a little hard to illustrate here, but the further forward into the lot we bring the structure, the more it obscures the view of the house from the street as you're coming down Leisure Lane. So we originally wanted to push the structure back even further. My client was a little disheartened when we told him that we couldn't do that. So we took some effort to go pretty far in the field with survey as far as laying this thing out to a level that we thought it looked good, was aesthetically pleasing, would fit the neighborhood, and things like that.
Okay. I'll reserve comment for now, but I will make one on that in a second. The the challenge here, I think, so I'll start making some comments here. So the challenge here is that you're trying to claim revegetation as a public interest, which I think if that was naturalized lawn or something along those lines, I think that might be something we could do if there was a specific planting plan along those lines. But in an area that was disturbed by the homeowner, try and claim that, whereas if this was his property and the abutting homeowner would, wasn't prohibiting you from doing the restoration, that would be required anyway.
Mhm.
So I'm a little bit concerned about allowing that as a public benefit. Similarly, the public benefit of collecting the roof runoff, if we didn't allow the structure, it wouldn't exist either. So it's like you were claiming stormwater management, which, in a no disturb zone is probably, and then the buffer zone, I think was probably to be required anyway. I think it's hard to sort of claim that as public benefit additionally. So I don't think we can use those issues. I'm just giving you my feedback on those specific two issues. The third issue, the comment that I have, and I'll open it up to the rest of the commission before we go to public comment, but I think that we have to weigh the public benefit of the wetland resources versus the aesthetic benefit of having the structure be 6 to 8 feet further back than it is necessary to keep it out of the no disturb zone. That's something we would have to weigh, and I'd say that given that we're in the Conservation Commission here, our commitment and our responsibility here is the public benefit of the wetland resources. But that's a comment from me.
Certainly. And Mr. Chairman, may I respond to those comments just briefly?
Okay.
Certainly, and you know me, I don't want to be argumentative at all. But with just a couple of things I want to note. One, with regard to the location of the garage, I think it's important to note that the area of the 50-foot buffer zone that we're proposing to encroach upon is existing lawn area now. Just to differentiate, we're not doing new clearing in the buffer zone to do this. That's an area that has somewhat low value as buffer zone to begin with. And the only other note I wanted to make is just to reiterate, we're not necessarily against restoration. And I completely understand where you're coming from. I think we kind of, with what the opposition that we were met on the other side of the property line, we're kind of stuck with as much as we're allowed to do here, to my knowledge.
I'm not actually taking you to task on the fact that you're not doing a full restoration in that area. I'm making a comment about the fact that you're trying to claim it as public benefit.
Sure, understood.
So, I want to I'll make a comment back to you. Is it a no disturb zone? Is a no disturb zone, and high quality. This isn't a paid lot here. I mean, this is lawn at the very least. So, I think there is value here, and a no disturb zone is meant to protect the wetlands, whether it's lawn or whether it's vegetation or woodland or whatever it is. The wetland resources there. I don't think we want to diminish it to the point of we can put a house on it or another structure on it. From my perspective. So, anybody from the commission want to have any questions for you before I go to public comment?
I'll have one more if nobody else does.
One thing I'd be interested in learning a little bit more about, is that a set of stairs directly attached to the garage on the right?
It is, yes, through the chair. And let me zoom in. This is proposed to be a 2-story garage. So what you see here is a set of stairs to the 2nd story of the garage. That is correct.
So why is it necessary, I guess, to have that in the no disturbance area, that set of stairs?
The way
Couldn't they be shifted to the other side?
Are you referring to the side down here?
Up in this area.
Up in this area here. It just has to do with the architecture of the garage, the way that the upstairs level lays out. Access is in the rear. It's just an architectural feature of the building. The building, the way it's set up, and I don't know the terms for it, but it's to have a old-fashioned gable roof with with the access on the ends rather than on the sides.
Anything else, Al?
No, I'm a little disturbed with that, though. Thank you.
Ben, you had
Yeah, no, I just appreciate the kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't in relation to the restoration subject on this project, and the history of sort of the concessions and reasoning as to why it is where it is. I would personally, I would like to see just something additional by way of public benefit. But I also appreciate that this is, proposed pre-existing lawn, that you've made concessions to get it to where it is. And that this is a significant project for a homeowner.
To that end, if I may, Mr. Chair, I just kind of muted and conferred with my client, and I know that Ms. Carlino had mentioned it earlier. As a public benefit, one thing that we could offer is to eliminate the conservation markers and put up a fence along the property line, a split rail fence that would prevent any further encroachment into that area. I don't know if that fits the threshold for public benefit, but I'll be frank, I'm quickly running out of ideas as far as the public benefit is concerned. So we're glad to offer that up.
I think that was going to be a condition regardless. So we really hadn't discussed this here, but I'd say given the history of disturbance across the boundary, I'd say that we would be skeptical that conservation markers would be sufficient to prevent further occurrences. So, I think that would probably be, at least I would have proposed that would be a condition. So it'd be hard to sort of claim that as a public benefit as well. Any other comments from the commission before we go to public benefit? I know there are at least two people that want to chime in here on public benefit. Jennifer, you want to?
Yeah, I just had one follow-up along the lines with Al. It was about the stairs. If they cannot be moved, then perhaps the stone patio could be. That's right in the no disturbance zone as well.
So one thing I just, before we go to public benefit, this is not an easy project for us, right? I mean, this is a pretty big challenge. And I think you're getting that feedback from us from the sense that the location, the conditions, it's no public benefit. The problem is, given that you're in the no disturb zone, you're in ACEC, you got waivers to request. I mean, outside of, if you were not in an ACEC, didn't require that waiver. If you weren't in the no disturbance zone, it becomes a little bit easier for us, right? But on top of it, not only are we in ACEC, what we abut a natural heritage, identified species here. So habitat. So I think that those are some challenges for us as we look at this project, and it is not the same kind of project that doesn't abut these type of specific, estimated rare species habitat or ACECs. Those raise the level of our responsibility, and I think that's a little bit of what you're hearing here. Just some additional commitment on our part to try and make this project be less impactful. I think that's really what we're trying to do. Why don't we go to public comment, and then we can circle back here and figure out where we want to go from here. So if you want to be heard here, I know I think Mr. Hurley had asked a question, and Mr. Wilbur. Oh, somebody else too. So you can raise your hand or put a note in there. I'm going to register. I'm going to recognize Mr. Hurley for a second, since he was the first one to ask. We will get other people. So just give me a second, Mr. Hurley, to get you into the meeting. In that limbo. There he is. Hi, Mr. Hurley, you can unmute yourself, turn on your video. Hi there, Mr. Hurley. If you could just identify yourself for the record, name and address.
Sure. And good afternoon, everybody. Paul Hurley, 25 Leisure Lane. Good to see you all, and thanks for taking the time out this afternoon. I want to put some comments on the record here in support of Mr. Giraldi and his project. I have known Mark for 20 years. I've been a resident here in the corner. My property abuts his, and or just one down in the circle. So I've known him for quite some time. It's hard to see it on the plot plan, but this property is really a high and dry property, right? I mean, it might, as you look at this, you may think of it more of a, more wetland buffer as you hear that wetland buffer and what have you. This is a very high and dry property. I know Mr. Giraldi has been very accommodating, trying to reposition this as Eric has highlighted. And in fact, I know between myself and Eric and Mr. Giraldi, we had 5 attempts to go over to the Wilburs to try to negotiate something, just to see if there was something we could do to make sure. We talked about the revegetation in that area. Mr. Giraldi was had opportunities. He was going to go back and try to negotiate this. It's very clear that can't happen, isn't going to happen, that the other side has their reasons for whatever that is, but it doesn't appear that that's the case, that there's any negotiation that can be done. I do think this building will fit well in the neighborhood. I know we've got support. I don't know if any of the other neighbors are on it. I don't know who else is on. I know we've got strong support in the neighborhood for Mr. Giraldi, also for what he's done. He's improved the area. Certainly he didn't know that, 40 years ago when, all this happened, that he was infringing on the neighbor's land. However, I think, based on some of the concessions, the revegetation plan that Eric talked about, I mean, it seems like a reasonable, middle ground for sure. And, I would just close and say, we're strongly in support of Mark and the project.
Thank you. Just going to return you to the audience, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Appreciate the comments. Okay, so we had another member message that they wanted to be recognized, so I will promote them to the meeting. Hello, you can unmute yourself and turn on your video.
Hello.
You could just identify yourself, your name and address for the record.
Be happy to. My name is Peg Holda, and I live at 21 Leisure Lane, which is directly across the circle from the applicant. And I really appreciate the thoroughness with which the commission is reviewing this proposal. I would like to weigh in to say that in 30 years of being a neighbor with the Giraldi family, the applicant, he has done an extraordinary job of improving not only his property, but the entire curb appeal of this portion of Leisure Lane. He has made every decision to enhance his property, thinking not only of himself, but what is it going to do to the neighborhood as a whole. He is thorough, thoughtful. The proposal that's been made will enhance the aesthetic of the property. He has taken into consideration not only the obligations to the well-being of the people of Easton and the conservation of the property, but also his direct abutters and those that he lives across from. I strongly support this proposal. When it is done, it is going to further beautify not only his property, but the neighborhood and enhance the value for all. So I thank you for your thoughtful consideration of this proposal, the modifications that he has consistently agreed to make. And I do hope that a decision can be made today, because this application has been pending for quite some time at considerable expense to the applicant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Just going to return you back to the waiting room. Okay, so we did get some written comments from the abutter, Mr. Wilbur, today. And if Mr. Wilbur, I don't know if he wants to speak, or he would just want his written comments on the record. I can do either one. It's up to Mr. Wilbur. You can either shoot me a message in chat or just raise your hand and I'll recognize you, or I will actually just read your okay, so he's raising his hand, so we'll get him into the meeting. There you go. Mr. Wilbur, you can take yourself off mute, turn on your video. The mute button and the video button are in the lower left on a Windows machine, and might be in a different location on an Apple machine. On an iPad, I think it's on the top. Give Mr. Wilbur another few seconds here to figure out how to turn himself on. Given Mr. Wilbur's challenges here, he can still try. I'm going to read his written comments into the record, and then we can see if he can get himself unmuted and video on here. It says, so this is from Edward Wilbur. Concerns of Project 20 Leisure Lane. Number 1, problems with the right-of-way. 2, fence on property line. This is what was written. Number 3 is relocate infiltration system to left side of planned garage. Number 4 is no work on 321R Turnpike Street, which I think we've already discussed. And 5, the woodshed and fire pit must be moved to 20 Leisure Lane. He's requesting it 20 feet from the boundary line, but I don't, that's a building thing, not me. So, those are his comments. On the record, I think we've touched on a couple of those already tonight, at least 2 or 3 of them. Mr. Wilbur, I'll give you one more chance here to speak. If you can find the mute button and turn that off and turn your video on. Otherwise, I'll just return you back to the waiting room. I do want to give you the opportunity to speak since you are a direct abutter, for sure.
Yeah, I think there's a couple choices. You might be able to hover the mouse over the bottom left corner, or the square where your name is up in the top right corner, there are 3 dots. If you click on the 3 dots, you should be able to unmute and start your video.
You're better support than I am. Wow. That was excellent. I tried them all and they all worked. That's
There's
perfect.
a few choices. So, yeah, it might not show up if you don't hover your mouse. Mine shows up, but I don't know if that works for everybody. But Mr. Wilbur did come to the office twice today with these concerns and, you know, obviously upset that work had been done on their property without permission, accidentally or not. And it's understandable they wouldn't want any more work done on the property.
Okay. I'll leave Mr. Wilbur there in case he happens to figure it out. So we'll give him till the end of discussion here. So, so from a commission standpoint, I think, let me just summarize, and then the commissioners can sort of chime in on whether or not we feel that these are substantial enough issues for the applicant to have to go back and either redo the design or to come back to us with additional information. So one is the location of the structure itself in the no disturb zone, whether or not that's sufficient or not, the location is acceptable or not. I think that certainly the whether or not and we'll have to sort of, we can discuss is whether or not being in the drainage easement is something we would want, whether or not it's restricted or otherwise. It's in the no disturb zone anyway, which we could say that that's our reasoning. You know, Mr. Wilbur's suggestion about moving the infiltration into outside the buffer zone, whether that's sufficient or not to do. And I think that I think whether or not we believe the public benefit is sufficient or not. I think at this point, personally, I don't think we've been presented with a public benefit that's acceptable. So, anything else from the commission? I know Al had concern about location of the stairs. I think given the design of the building, the only other place to put the stairs would be in the front, because the side of the building, they had to redesign the whole building. Maybe turn it would be the only other thing, but
You might be able to turn that. That's one thing I don't remember if that was in their waiver or not for minimizing impacts, is to turn it so it's.
I just don't know where the entrance to the garage would be. I don't know where the entrance to the garage would be. It could be that it's a rear entrance, you know, front and rear entrance garage only. You know, those gable, you know, ended houses, you know, that's the problem with it. It's not a problem, it's the design. So, yeah. But at the same time,
just to kind of, I guess, narrow this, I have might be a silly question, but a crushed stone patio, that would be considered a pervious surface here, right?
It would, yes.
Is it? And so what's the difference, I guess, from our consideration? This is a question for Jennifer, for the applicant, for whoever, between the pervious surface of crushed stone versus grass. And so are we really looking at, I know it's a change to the area, but are we actually looking at a difference in 90 square feet of built environment? Or are we looking at 90 square feet plus the crushed stone as a significant change in work in the buffer?
Give them grass if they want it.
1 second.
Jennifer, did you want to? I think you directed it. I mean,
I'm open to whoever can answer that, because I genuinely don't know. I don't know the answer there, right? Like, if someone were to come to me and say, I want to change all of my grass in this buffer zone to crushed stone, I feel like I'd probably have an issue with that, but I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I don't actually. You might be. There are arguments out there these days that might be better for the environment. So,
okay.
But There are. Jennifer, you may not like it, but I
I
think
don't have
that,
to like it. I just have to meet the regs.
yeah, no, I know. So I personally think, so there's a difference between using crushed stone on driveway, which I think eventually becomes impervious. Okay, it takes a tremendous, so I think that's one of the challenges. Now, it doesn't become impervious in a year. It becomes impervious over years. I think, crushed stone is probably impervious enough that I'm actually not objecting to the crushed stone other than its alteration in the no disturbance zone. It's not the pervious nature of it, it's alteration of the area of the no disturb zone. So, and we go back to that alter, like in order to then put the crushed stone in, they have to alter it. And so that's part of my concern about that.
So I can.
If you told me, Eric, just let us sort of discuss for a moment, and I'll come back to you maybe. Yep. And I think that if you told me that we could move the house outside the house, I keep on calling it a house, the structure, outside the no disturb zone, and we'd say okay to the crushed stone patio, maybe I get there, right? Maybe that's the difference that we make here. We don't have to move all of it, which would make them move the whole structure maybe 15 feet forward, right? Maybe 12, 15, 16 feet forward, as opposed to maybe 8 or 10 forward. So I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I definitely do see a difference between the structure and crushed stone. So that's a good question for me.
I mean, I see the alteration and I wonder why the patio needs to be there. It's starting to look more like an accessory apartment than something that's necessary next to a garage when the whole rest of the property has the ability to have a patio or, outside seating area, whatever that's for, could be in another location. It doesn't need to be right up against the wetland.
I mean, the fire pit is an outside seating area already, as well. I mean, it's set up that way. The other thing I do want to make a comment that in response to something Mr. Hurley said, he was one of the abutters. I was there 2 weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago. It wasn't dry, just so you know. The wetlands were wet, very wet. So you couldn't walk in them, unless you had boots on. So I just want to sort of make that comment that while much of the upland is dry, the wetlands are wet. They aren't, just some theoretically, the soil tells us it's wetlands type of thing. It was significantly wet. Any other comments from the commissioners?
I guess I'd be a lot happier if the building was slid forward, so that there was basically no construction in the no disturbance zone. It looks like there's a lot of arbitrary construction in that buffer zone area to me.
It's getting me angry. I'm just giving him.
Just Mr. Diaz, just tell him that he's not on mute. So,
Okay.
I can hear him. So if he's, I'm going to take a deep breath here. Okay. So what kind of, before I go back to Eric, I know Eric's got some feedback for us, but where's our bottom line on this? So do we need public benefit of some sort on this, right? Is there anybody who's okay with either the public benefit that's been proposed, or do we need to get some other public benefit? Ben, you seem to be somewhat okay with what was being proposed as public benefit, and
yeah, I think we need a little bit more of an articulable public benefit. That being said, I also think that we are fixing a problem here, and I think that should be acknowledged, right? There was, I think, there was some clearing of a wetlands. We're agreeing there was some clearing of a wetlands, and we're coming up with a practical solution to stop and mitigate the clearing with the resources and what we have available to the applicant here. And I think, you know, markers versus post and rail fence, I prefer the post and rail fence. I'd like to give some credit where that's due, but under our bylaw, I think we need a public benefit that stems just a little bit farther than that, in my opinion.
Okay. I agree that we're, you know, I'm glad we all don't agree. So just so you know, we're having a robust conversation here, and I really do appreciate it. I think it's pushing all of us to think things through, and so I do appreciate that. My own position is that in order to fix this problem, I don't think I have to accept a 1,400 square foot structure.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with that.
I think that we could fix the problem without allowing a 1,400 square foot structure. Now, the only reason why it's coming forward to us is because he asked for a 1,400 square foot structure.
Yeah.
So he's trying to get something out of it in the same manner that we're trying to fix whatever the problem that occurred. So I'm appreciative of that, and I'm trying to. I don't think anybody here has yet said this is ridiculous. We're never going to approve this, right? It's how do we get it to approval? And so I think there's different paths that we've all thought of, because I don't think we have a clear path to that approval yet. But from my perspective, that's, you know, there. So I think that, you know, Ben has the most clear vision to some sort of public benefit, but thinks like that maybe should be more. I definitely think there should be more. I don't, Alan and Mike, should there be more public benefit, or is it borderline okay as it is? Maybe a little.
I think there should be more.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of stick with the no disturbance zone. That means no disturbance.
Okay.
And so one way or another, reduce the size of the building to get it out of the no disturbance zone, or slide it to the west enough to get it out of the disturbance zone. I think, but so far we've heard nothing from the applicant that would give us any sign that he would be willing to do any adjustment.
Yeah, well, I will say, Mr. Diaz, I think, was going to give me some feedback, and I asked him to hold on. So I will give him the, you know, perhaps he's got some information for us. So I think that there's probably two things here that we're focused in on. One is the location of the building in the no disturbance zone. That's something that's a little bit problematic, and beefing up the public benefit. If I had to drill it down to the things that are going to get us to an approval on this, is the no disturbance zone location, getting it out of the no disturbance zone, and giving us something to hang our hat on as far as public benefit is concerned. Eric, you have the floor here, my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody's comments and deliberation. What I was going to say before, when I interrupted, and I apologize for that, is that we can agree, we were talking about the crushed stone patio at the time. We can agree to eliminate the crushed stone patio, if that helps at all. We can get that out of there. The other thing too, I want to make sure I'm understanding this, and I think you summed it up very well, Mr. Chairman, when you said that it sounds like the issue is the location of the structure in the 50-foot buffer zone and the public benefit. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. If we were to get the structure out of the 50-foot buffer zone, hypothetically speaking, we would still need a waiver for the work in the ACEC. Is that correct? So we would still be required to provide you with the public benefit.
Correct.
So and I want to ask the commission and Ms. Carlino for some guidance on this, where we have an abutter that will not allow us to work on the property where the encroachment is. I have a client who is a 41-year tax-paying resident of the town, who you've heard from the neighbors has been a great steward of the land, albeit, you know, there was an encroachment. What would be an acceptable public benefit in this case? What can we do? We can't do work off the property. We can't fix what's been done beyond what we've already proposed. We've agreed to a fence to stop it from ever happening again. We've given up, we went over the preferred alternatives. We've given up the crushed stone patio behind the building. Does the commission or the staff have any recommendations on what we could possibly do beyond that?
Sorry.
Ben?
No, well, now I'm thinking if you're reducing the crushed stone, right now, you would also have a net reduction in total impervious surface in the buffer zone. Right, and
I don't think it's getting counted as impervious surface.
Okay, but so that's a disturbance of some kind. So you get rid of that. You have, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. You have a roof that's calculated and accounted for, and you've reduced asphalt surface area inside the buffer zone by eliminating that chunk.
And allowing a portion of the property, of the abutters property that was disturbed, that is almost 3 times the size of the rooftop and the disturbance area, to revegetate naturally, because we can't do a restoration on that property without their permission. My hands are very much tied as far as coming up with more of a public benefit than that.
So I'm gonna counter something Ben said here for a second, is, and I don't have the calculations here, but they are replacing, so they are removing some asphalt, but they're putting some asphalt in front of the garage as well. That's in the same 50 to 100 zone. So I think it looks probably that it's probably a little bit less area than perhaps is being removed. So there's some net benefit there, but I don't think it's I don't think it's I don't think it's we're getting all of that square footage back, and that is the outer buffer as opposed to the no disturb buffer. It's just comments, not, you know.
So I may have misunderstood that. So where you're talking about the asphalt being added over there, that's still in a buffer zone.
See where the 1% line is?
Yep.
That whole triangle area is grass getting converted to asphalt.
Okay.
So in the past, you have accepted a public benefit offsite if needed. So that is an option to contribute or do a project offsite on conservation property if that's needed.
And I'm getting the nod from my client that he would be willing to something, open to something like that. I think we're just going to need a little bit of guidance on what is appropriate in this case, and what something like that looks like.
It's something we've talked about for a couple of years, and we've talked about trying to come up with a list of projects that we need done. And Jennifer, I don't know. We've necessarily talked about that having.
It was a very short list. I started it probably a year ago, and I think there were only 2 things on it. So I can revisit that list.
I am willing to accept, and we certainly have done a couple of times in my time on the commission, a couple of offsite public benefits, and there was one that we actually proposed that somehow I think the DPW went out and did it in the interim, so that it was one of those things where we were going to try and get some materials pulled off of I think one of the Wheaton Farm properties, and so so I'm willing to consider that. Jennifer would have to say, what those were, and I'm willing to do that. I don't know if there's enough space on this property to do any sort of conversion of lawn to some sort of planting area, mitigation area. I don't know if someplace maybe down on the south part of the property, I don't know. That is in the 100-foot riverfront, so we get a little bit wonky there as well. So a little bit of a challenge. I think we can find a path. I don't have a path for you here on April 10th, though. That's my only concern, because really, it's generally, we don't dictate what the public benefit is. And I know you're looking for guidance from us because we deal with this day in and day out. I think that Jennifer does have some potentially some projects that maybe need to be done on one of the properties that maybe we could, your client could give some assistance to. And I'm more than willing to consider that, 100%. I think it's a great idea, and that we've talked about it for years, and so.
So we actually need a couple of things. We would need the revised plan, the revised waivers, the silty erosion sort of water that's headed toward A8. That's something we need to look at. And then some possible public benefit projects.
Yeah, so I think at least two of us have expressed some interest in having the structure moved out of the no disturb zone. I think I'm getting a nod from Mike, so that's 3. Ben was less committed to that, which is I think that's my assessment, Ben. So I think at least 3 of us would want it moved out of the no disturb zone. You can choose not to and make an argument that it can't be, and then we would make our decision if that was the way you wanted to go. I would suggest that probably isn't a great choice, considering 3 of us have already told you that's not a good thing. But that's certainly your decision. So I think that Jennifer summed it up there. There's probably 3 or 4 things here that we still need. Potentially moving the structure out of the no disturb zone, finding this project and having you redo the waiver. You still have 1 waiver that you'd have to get, and taking care of the silty sediment going in near A8. And what else? Was 1 other thing.
Just coming up with the public benefit.
Right. So I combined
Yeah,
that.
I can look through my file and let Eric know what those 2 were. I don't know if they're appropriate or not, but we were trying to make a list.
Yeah, I know, it's one of those
For
things.
people.
Well, no offense, we got a great public that is already out there doing a lot of this stuff. When something happens, there's a whole bunch of crew that's out there taking care of stuff. So, Eric, do you or your client have any questions for us?
I don't have any questions, but just to, obviously we need to confer with Jennifer as far as public benefits and things are concerned. I will say that moving the building or shrinking the building beyond what it is now is a very tough ask, and it's a very hard thing for my client to swallow. For what it's worth, that's where we stand on our side.
I do appreciate that. I think that's the ask, though. I just want to give you clear direction. That's all.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate the clear direction and the consideration. I hear you loud and clear. I think the thing to do at this point is let us talk amongst ourselves. Let us get with Jennifer as far as the public benefit is concerned. And I think we should probably table this to the next available meeting.
Okay, so our next meeting is April 24th. So it's a request of the applicant. Will continue 20 Leisure Lane to April 24th. I need a motion.
So moved.
Need a second.
Maybe a second.
Carol Spady, a second. Roll call vote.
Benson, aye.
Carol, aye.
Beatty, aye.
Caulfield's aye. Okay, so we'll see you on the 24th, and hopefully we get this worked out amenable to everybody. So that's our goal.
Well, thank you all for your time and your consideration. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, wow. Next up is, modification request for Sawmill Village, 560 Foundry Street, Easton 1687, and DEP 152 1694. So who's here? I got Megan. Oh, she already got her up here. There we go. Hi, Megan.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Great. To start, just to remind everyone, if anyone's forgotten about the project, this was a.
So just identify yourself for the record, Megan. I can see.
Sorry about that. Megan Dutra with Conoco Engineers.
Okay, great.
So the project at 560 Foundry Street was a 44 unit subdivision in the compact overlay district. It's currently under construction and we're looking now to do a few modifications on the plans. I can share my screen and I have those modifications highlighted to make them a little bit easier to see.
That'd be great.
So there were two main reasons why we are doing modifications. The first were for the original C2 units. Because of the way the retaining walls were structured and where the garages were with the near the rear of the unit, there was basically going to have to be a 10 to 12 foot retaining wall, not retaining wall, sorry, 10 to 12 foot foundation, which is kind of a big waste of material and a little bit impractical. So based on that, some of the C2 units were changed to move the garages further forward. So the units that were changed, you can see here were unit C1, sorry, unit 1 rather, unit 8, and then unit 14 is actually very similar to the original C2 units, except that there is a overhead to the ground, basically. And on the western side, the units for that were unit 27, unit 39, and unit 34, as well as unit 32.
So Megan, how do we know what the original foundation layout for those units were? Is it on here somewhere? Are they?
It is not on here. I can show you. All of them are basically changed. These are very similar, except for this little bump out here is new, but otherwise this would be the original layout. This little bump out here is just the overhead from the basement to the ground.
Yeah, okay, got it. Okay.
And so basically you can see comparing that to this one, the layout's a little different and the garage is moved further up in the unit.
I see, okay.
Overall, the changes, scroll to the other page. In addition to those units on the C2 units, unit 2 and 3 were also shifted closer to the street to allow for a bit more mowing room in the back between the units and the visual barrier for the floodplain. Based on all the changes for those units and the driveways, which were shortened overall, even though the units were slightly higher in roof area, we decreased our impervious by about 780 square feet, which is now lawn area behind the units. In addition to those changes, we also had a few changes based on the test pits that we've done in the field. I believe it was written into our order of conditions that we would modify things based on what we found in the soil conditions. So those changes mostly were based in the at Basin 1 here, rather than sand, we found more of a loamy sand. So there were actually no changes to this basin, and we modified the changes to the back basin instead to even out the differences. So Basin 2 here has been modified. It's slightly less deep now, and the outlet control structure was changed. In addition to that, the 4 bays were removed, and we've placed in infiltration system here with an isolator row, which will provide the necessary treatment as well as additional recharge. And the Basin 2 now serves more for detention. It's allowed to infiltrate, but we're not accounting for any recharge in it. On the western side, I believe the only change we've made was to the outlet control structure for Basin 4. And that's mostly just to balance our peaks and posts. So compared to existing conditions, we still are meeting our required recharge, as well as our volumes and flow are still below existing conditions. So we still meet all the conditions of the stormwater standards in Massachusetts. Other than those changes, it's not really too much relevant to wetland. We do have a few small changes where we changed some property lines that was just related to fire building code. We also, because of the unit changes, we did do a little modified grading. Some of the retaining walls were actually removed. And we'll use this unit as an example. There was a retaining wall here, but because the garage is further up now, we actually could grade this out and make it kind of a smooth slope now rather than having the drop off of the retaining wall. And that happened as well over here. I believe we had one example on that, actually two on the west side. Here as well as here. And actually these two as well was the same issue. We could remove the retaining walls and just make them gradual slopes instead. That covers all of the modifications that we changed. I could take any questions you might have on those. I did run through it pretty quick, so.
You did a good job, Megan. I appreciate it. I actually didn't understand about half of them before you explained them to me, so you did a good job. So I appreciate it. Jennifer, you have some comments for us?
I actually just have maybe two. So one, is this sheet 15?
Yeah.
All the faces are actually over it, the number, so 15.
Yeah.
So we have all the wetland resource areas on here, the wetland and the river, but not the floodplain. And it would be really good to see it labeled, unless you point it out to me. I'm just not seeing it, but the floodplain really should be labeled there if you could do that.
Okay, we can show the proposed floodplain on the sheet as well.
Okay. And the only other thing I was going to add is that they've actually been doing a really good job at the site, and I just want to give them some kudos where they're due. There's been a lot of water and there's a lot of soil on that site, and they're doing a really good job with keeping up with the monitoring reports. Any problems they have, they're notifying me right away. I know there was some sediment in the wetlands. They took care of that right away. They're actually doing an impressive job. So I just want to pass that along to everyone.
Yeah, I go by that property a couple times a week at least, and considering the amount of dirt that's on that property, the fact that that street is clean, it is a testament to the kind of work that they're doing on the site, to be quite honest. So we should give that to the whoever the construction crew is.
Yeah, start to finish, construction crew, monitoring crew, everybody, you're all doing a really good job. So thank you.
Thank you.
So before I go to public comment here, because it's on the agenda, I just want a point of clarification to us is that what our decision here today is whether or not we believe these amendments would require us to change the order of conditions. If we believe that these changes do not require us to amend the order of conditions, we can just allow it as a minor modification of the plan. There's nothing minor on this property, just to be quite honest, but just within the scope of how we describe these things. If we have to change the order of conditions, they would have to file a request for amendment, notify abutters, have a hearing, and do all that stuff. So they're presenting these changes to us, and it's up to us to decide, do we need to change the order of conditions? So am I correct, Jennifer? That's the way I understand this to be. Okay.
Correct. Yep. And there's, from the order of conditions and the changes that are made, there's nothing here that you need to change any of the conditions that you already have, and you don't need to add any new conditions. So you could consider it a minor modification, even though, as you said, there's a lot of changes.
Right. Okay. So, I will ask this for the record. Any public comment for 560 Foundry Street? Seeing none. Why don't we take? Why don't I make a motion just to get this officially on the record? I make a motion to accept the changes, unless anybody has any comments. Anybody have any comments? I feel like we don't have to change the order of conditions on this. I think all this is within the scope of what we originally anticipated.
It's a lot of minor changes.
With a lot of minor changes, right? And so which Megan did a great job of presenting to us. So, and so I make a motion to accept these changes as minor modifications without any need to change the order of condition.
Carol second.
Call Phil's Carol second. Roll call vote.
Benson, I.
Carol, I.
ADI.
Call Phil's aye. Okay, Megan, that's it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next up is the laundry list of enforcement actions we have going on.
I feel like it gets bigger every week. It's supposed to be going the
That's
opposite
because I
direction.
haven't been putting a lot of them on there. We just started to do these behind the scenes, and then I kind of go, oh, by the way, there are violations, but they're working on them. So I try to give you the positive one. So 230 Main Street, I met with their wetland consultant. They'll be coming up with a plan within a month. 346 Foundry Street, met with the property owners, reviewed it again. They've started their restoration work with a plant list. They're going to go through and calculate how many plants. 114 Prospect Street, all the fill has been removed and the area has been temporarily stabilized. 5 Jonathan, last week they met with an environmental consultant. I spoke with that person today. We're meeting at the end of April, but we do need to issue an enforcement order for that one, just to memorialize more than the violation letter that I've already sent. It is a significant amount of almost 275 one side of the stream and back. So, I mean, it's more than 350 linear feet of bank alteration. So we do need to memorialize that with an enforcement order. So if you guys would approve that, we can do that.
I make a motion to issue an enforcement order for 5 Jonathan Drive.
Carol second.
Call Phil's Carol second. Roll call.
Benson, I.
Carol, I.
Spady, aye.
Call Phil's aye.
So I did, when I spoke with the consultant today, I did say, well, typically we do within a month, you should have a restoration plan to us, and that was doable. Update on 20 Short Street, that it was an older violation that you guys issued a permit for. They're going to start moving brush, in the spring. I did ask for monthly updates because nothing much has happened on that project. And then 33 Gilmore, I didn't have any contact information for this person, so I had to send another letter. If there's no reply, then we would have to go to an enforcement order on that one, but not needed. The letter just went out on the 3rd, so we could give that till the next meeting. That's it.
Okay. Conservation projects. So back in January, we discussed a whole list of conservation projects, and we talked about a bunch of them, but I don't know, we've actually made some headway on some of them. So can't say
we've made some progress.
Yeah, believe me, I was looking at it and saying, oh yes, we did make progress on this.
We made some progress. I rearranged them. Everything somebody said they were interested in doing, I put up at the top of the list. And you got copies of the work that Aiden Thomas did on the conservation signs. If you haven't looked at that, definitely take a look at it. That's some impressive work.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah,
a
really
student
was.
from
Really
Bristol
kudos.
Aggie. Yeah, looks great.
Yeah, very much.
So we were looking to just update this and put it on the agenda to talk about anything else that we were planning to try to do. Let's see. I mean, Tufts tenancy, we're still moving on that with the master plan. Clifford Grant Trail rerouting. You guys some of you are working on that this weekend. Thank you, Mike, for taking that on. I will be teaching rock climbing this weekend, both days, so
That's fun.
cannot join you. Wheaton Barn restoration, we are still going back and forth on the contract with our contractor. Hopefully that will be finalized this week. Regulations are on the agenda. And we'll be talking about the open space plan soon. Sam Wright Field, we did get the earmark. And so we're finalizing that contract with BSC Group. And I'm just forwarding it to the select board for their signature, and we should be able to get started on that one. Community garden, there's actually a Eagle Scout candidate who's looking to work on the greenhouse. So we meet with them tomorrow. That's the progress. So moving along more than what I expected.
Oh, you think about the top 10 here, you made progress on almost all of it. So yeah, no, I think we're making quite a bit more progress than we give ourselves credit for.
Yes.
So, I think just from my standpoint, and I don't have time to do it, and it's just trying to find a time to get out, or find someone to get out and certify these vernal pools, since it's that time of year.
It's so nice out. I'm actually leading a class on Wednesday for other conservation agents. No, well, not leading, I'm co-leading.
Yeah.
A class on Wednesday, but it is beautiful out. If someone wants to go out during the day, give me a call, because I'm ready to go outside.
I mean, I'm out every morning. Let me know. I'll go out, learn how to certify a vernal pool. Let's go.
It'll be Thursday.
So that one vernal pool's in Mike's neighborhood.
Yep.
11 Carey Street extension.
Yep. He also did a public benefit. We did the trail sign, so kind of go back.
Just if you want to get out and do one, Thursday morning or whatever it is, feel free. The
Cool.
Depot Street ones, can't miss them. Let me tell you that. There is one it's not marked as a potential vernal pool. It's actually off the trails, and I should probably put it on a map for you to tell you where it is.
Sure.
It's a little sort of pot one. It's a little bit smaller than the other ones, but still certifiable. So.
I think there's one behind the gun club too, but I'm gonna show you that too.
Sign replacement. That's it's up to you guys. If we want to get into this, it's more Jennifer negotiating with a vendor type of thing. How much money we want to spend. The signs are about 2,000 a piece. So somewhere around there, maybe 1,800.
And Aiden put a priority list there for which ones needed to be done right away and which ones didn't. So that's helpful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody want to take on the signs or what? Guess not. So why don't we try and focus? So the only other thing that is it possible for us to maybe the one thing we could maybe push forward in addition to what you're pushing forward is the forestry plan for Wheaton Farm. Is there any way to sort of talk to somebody about trying to get in line to do something there?
Sure. Actually, when I walked it with Phil last year, it wasn't the right time to schedule anything because the pine trees didn't have enough cones on them.
Yeah.
And so you want to wait until there's a lot of cones on them. So when you clear it, the cones drop and there's new seed for the following season.
Yeah.
I can ask Phil if it's time and then look back into the grants from DCR.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Anything else from anybody? Okay. Regulatory revision preliminary discussion. So we have two things in the packet. The first one, hang on, my doesn't like this 30 megabyte file. So I left the compressed one at my work computer. So the first thing was what we found helpful in the prior couple times that we've done. I think we've during my time we've probably done regulatory revisions 3 different times. Is to start with a guiding principle, and that's sort of give us this overarching. We agree this is what we're trying to accomplish in a very 50,000 foot view. And the reason why we do that is that when we get down into the nitty gritty of this, and we start talking about language, about specific regulations, and we can sort of point back to, well, hang on a second, that's going beyond what we originally thought, or that's outside the scope of what we were trying to accomplish here, or whatever it is. That I think that this helps head off some disagreements going down the road. It's helped us in the past. It's very simple. You know, I gave you the 2 different versions we've used. We used the second one twice. So the first one was a little simpler. The second one, we had a little bit more disagreement amongst the members about what we were trying to accomplish. So we had to amend it a little bit so we could all agree what we were trying to do. And I'm actually just going to bring up another document because that was not behaving. So I don't have well, I shouldn't say that. I'm the author of both of them. So I have some ownership. But I really don't, I have no preference of which one is perhaps better than the other one. So so there's a 2018 version and a 2020 version. Anybody think this is necessary to do? I'm only giving you my own experience in this in the past few years. Al's nodding his head. Mike's saying it worked out. Mike was here a couple of times that we did this. So
yep. Yeah, the 2020 one
it helped. So
yeah, I like 2020. It's nice.
The 2021.
Yeah, simple.
Anybody want to add anything to it? Anybody wants to wordsmith it? Dislikes what come up with before? Okay, so we'll agree to use the 2020 guiding principles as part of this, framework that when we start looking at regulatory revision, and it is going to make a difference if you actually, it's interesting. I'm just going to, and this is weird. I know I'm weird. I know I have fuzzy things, but so I actually have all my regulations and bylaw in a binder, right? And inside the cover is the guiding principles. You can't see it because but it's the guiding principles there. Because whenever I opened it up, it sort of kept me to sort of keep grounded as to what I was doing, right? This is what I was trying to accomplish, and I wasn't trying to be overreaching, and I wasn't trying to be more restrictive or less restrictive or whatever. This is what we're trying to do, and I think that one of the things on here is that Jennifer's really done a great job since she came on board, is really making the expectations clear to applicants. And it took her a good 6 months even to get the regular engineers guy, the engineer companies, to say this is a packet. If you don't have all this, it's not a packet. And if you just send it to me the first time, there's going to be much less back and forth, and we'll get to the hearings quicker, and we'll get through the hearings quicker. And I know Jennifer sort of was pulling her hair out when she first started, saying, "Oh my goodness, I got to get these companies in line." But and so.
I do like efficiency.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's really been a benefit, to be quite honest. And I think at the end of the day, the applicants have clear expectations of, if I get all this in, I can get on the agenda and get in and out of it. So I think that's what we're trying to do here. So we'll use the 2020 and we'll do that. I am really having trouble pulling up that. I'm going to close this document, see if I can get it open again.
I may have those open as well if you want me to put them on.
Yeah, I was gonna put it up on the screen.
Okay.
I'll put this up. So this is what Jennifer has put as framework. We don't have to, we can decide which one of these we want to do, and we don't even need to decide it tonight. I think it's just a regular general discussion of things that people also want to.
It's not up.
Yeah, no, I'm
okay.
doing it. Yeah, no, I'm trying to talk and do this at the same time. Should be up now.
Yes.
Okay. So I think that Jennifer's just trying to give us some general guidance here. There's probably some specifics that we've all sort of pointed out. When I read that, I had no idea what it said until 3 years after I started, type of thing. I think that one of the overarching things is, in the second bullet point there is that, the first two bullet points really sort of, I think, are at the core of what we're really trying to accomplish here. And that is that the regulations are difficult to read, and they are very repetitive, which see number one. It makes them very difficult to read. And so I think there are certain ways to streamline this. There are certain aspects of the regulations that are repeated in each and every section. We really don't need that. It can just be referenced that you must meet the waiver requirements in section such and such, or you must meet the performance standards here. You don't have to repeat them over and over and over again. And it just makes it difficult to sort of find what you're really supposed to read about the regulations. What are the restrictions in this particular wetland resource? And so I think that that's something at the core of what we tried to do. And the other thing to do, if we really want to get into this, is that if anybody's ever had a chance to read other conservation regulations in other towns, you may find things that work the way you want them to work, at least from a structure standpoint. We don't have to match the regulations to another town, because our town is our town. But I think that the structure of regulations can be helpful in sort of understanding how do I frame this? How do I restructure our regulations so they're clear, understandable, and easy to follow, right? And the reason we want that is we want it to be easy to follow, right? We want someone to understand the expectations, and so it's not unclear to them when they come to us. And Jennifer has to deal with homeowners all the time saying, I have no idea what you mean, right? And it's not because they're not wetland scientists. None of us are wetland scientists, and yet we eventually have a decent idea of what the regulations tell us, right? So I think that's part of this right here. So the other thing I think Jennifer is suggesting here is that if there are parts of the regulations that are no more restrictive than the act itself, we don't need to repeat it, right? If the WPA has the same restriction as we do, we don't need to state it. We can state the WPA. This is the regs that we follow, except below, right? I mean we don't need to. The WPA is, by the way, the WPA is about 5 times as large as ours. Okay, I have that in my. I can tell
you, any consultant or any engineer who comes to town, they don't want to read through our regulations too. They want to. Well, what's the difference? Just tell me what the difference is between the two.
That's right. That's right.
So to make it as streamlined as possible makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, and it does make it easier, especially for applicants, because the WPA is WPA no matter which town they're in. And if we're not being more restrictive, we really shouldn't be just using words to fill up the page. So, I think that one of the things that Jennifer points out here is that are the regs reflective of the bylaw, or are they overstepping beyond the bylaw? And that's one thing for us to understand too, is that there may be things in the bylaw that require us to have regulations. There was something we did related to, I think, what was it recently? Last year we had to have a change of the bylaw, right? Because we wanted to change a regulation around it. And we couldn't because the bylaw said it a certain way. And so we had to change the bylaw first to do that. So one of the things, the bylaw is very easy to read. If you haven't read the bylaw and you've just gone straight to the regulations, go back to the bylaw. The bylaw is only about 15 pages. It really is much shorter, much more direct, but it's also such a high level because they want you to implement regulation. It doesn't mean we have to be 75 pages in regulation. But I think that I think these are these are good instructions from Jennifer, to be quite honest. And I really think that we should start with clear, concise, readable, easy to follow, non-repetitive. Oh yeah, definitely put that in the top 5 things. Non-repetitive. It's my pet peeve when I
Repeat
first
it.
read it. What's that?
Repeat it.
Yeah, exactly.
You want it non-repetitive.
I really, when I first read them, I said, "Oh my God, this is." So I think what will happen is we start to peel apart some of these things that, with reading. And first of all, let's not try and tackle all 75 pages at once. Let's do this in sections. Let's try and figure out things one at a time. We can even restructure the regulations in pieces. We don't have to do this all in one sitting, right? And we should start with structure. We should start with clearing up some of the stuff that just absolutely doesn't belong. The one thing I am going to caution us to do is let's not undo any of the protections we've already got in place, right? I mean, we've got a bylaw in town. We've got and the voters have voted on that. So we're here to uphold that bylaw. And we've got 4,000 acres that we own ourselves. And so, we are charged with protecting it as well as all the other wetland resources in town. That's what Easton is about. That's what people love about Easton, right? We talked about John Grant in a couple of weeks ago and about the impact he's had on this town. And that's what people, when they come to Easton, they say, "Oh my God, look at all the green space, all this other." We value those wetland resources, and the regulation should reflect that. Doesn't mean we have to be overreaching. Doesn't mean we have to let it all go. We just need to do what we're supposed to do. Jennifer, any other comments?
More a question of how do you want to proceed? Like how can I prepare things so that it's easiest for you? Like when I think about, the question of, is it more restrictive than Wetland Protection Act? And then my first question is, well, how often do you read Wetland Protection Act? Are you clear on what performance standards say? And do you want to go by each performance standard and take a look at those first? How do you want, if you start with bank, okay, this is what Wetland Protection Act says about bank. What do you want it to be for the bylaw? And then talk about, all the points about bank, or is that too, we don't really talk about bank too much. Do you start with BBW, but do you want to go by each? You want to go page by page, section by section, or do you want to start with resource areas and then fill in all the back stuff afterward? What makes the most sense for you, so that I know how to prepare it in my head first and then put it down for you guys?
So I will say that we tend to live in the town bylaw and regulations as opposed to WPA, right? And so when we get a project that is strictly WPA, our heads sort of go, okay, what do we do here? Partly because we live and breathe in the town regulation. But if there's things that we can, I would like to go through the resource areas and say, just in general, is this a more restrictive definition, or is it the same definition that's in the WPA? Is it more? The other thing we have to be a little bit careful about is WPA isn't always a standard here. Our bylaw may be more restrictive as well, right? So we have to sort of sit back and say, okay, how does it match up against the bylaw? And we have to make sure that maybe the regulation doesn't match the bylaw. And it's just over the years, that's just what's happened. So I think that's that. I think that, to me, it would be, I'd want to start going through the resource areas, and I think we should go to the ones we deal with the most first, because we're most familiar with them. Like, I think we start with BVW because we deal with BVW every single meeting. And so I think take something that's so familiar to us and then we have a conversation. I think that's probably the place to start. And just
Okay.
talk about BVW, because that'll allow us to sort of get a cadence, get a some momentum going, and then we can sort of figure out, okay, this works, that doesn't work. I think it's hard for us that we haven't worked together as a group to say, wow, this is how you do regulation revision. So
Should we try to design that first project as a model for the rest of them?
yeah.
Yeah.
I am going to tell you that what will eventually happen is it'll be your model until you get to the end and you realize that you've now changed to a little bit different version of it, and you'll have to go back to the beginning and clean it up. It's just it's the nature of what happens.
Right.
It's just it's the way it works. There's nothing wrong with it because it gives you some sort of
Structure.
directionality.
Do you want to see other bylaws first? I mean, other towns' regulations first, or no? Just hold off on that. Different ways that they're organized.
I'll leave that up to the other commissioners, because I would do it anyway. So it's the way I, but it's just the way I roll. So
That seems like a lot.
yeah.
That
I
might be too
may come in
overwhelming.
with an example and say, here.
Ben talks about law all the time. So what do you
Yeah.
think?
You know, I'll be totally honest. I was supposed to go take a look at the Sharon bylaws between the last meeting I was at and this one, and I haven't looked at them at all. So before I say that, I just want to read a couple other towns, right? And I've been in a couple other towns' bylaws, and I can tell you that, like, I don't want to model ours. I won't start throwing towns under the bus or on the bus, but there is if we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and there's someone who we really like a couple of their sections and think that it makes sense, I'm fully on board with saying, let's use it. Yeah. The other thing that I'm kind of thinking about as we're going through this is, and I think there's pros and cons to it, right? Like, we work with a whole bunch of different engineers very regularly. Is it worth asking people, what is your input on these bylaws? And don't say get rid of all of them, right? But like, are there towns that you think we should look at? Are there, inconsistencies in here that you think should be cleaned up that drive you nuts when you look at them? Is it worth weighing on that? But to get to the question asked, I would like to start this by let's look at the BVW and see what inconsistencies we want to fix as a test run, because I think we've all touched that 100 times. And there's my rambling answer.
Okay.
Okay, is that enough direction for now?
It is. I'm just going to keep the part about obviously best scientific evidence available and performance standards provide resilience or climate mitigation, because we have to look at our regulations anyway for climate mitigation, climate resilience under our MS4 permit.
Okay.
And
So-
about a year ago, I did write a grant, an MVP grant, to try to have a consultant help us with this. And we had a number of consultants and local engineers saying, yeah, I would provide comments on this. So there's certainly people who are interested in working in that area.
I think that one of the things, and there has been some attempt at adding climate resiliency into the regulations, even when it's not in the bylaw. And so Arlington was the first one to do it. And so there is some models out there of not having to change the bylaw to put climate resiliency into your wetland regulations. So
Just basically keep trees and infiltrate all the water you can.
right.
And
Would that like reference back to the climate report that told us about food insecurity this way and allow public benefit through that? Right. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here.
do you need any kind of a summary? Would that be helpful on climate?
It wouldn't not be helpful. I feel like we're giving you
I
a lot of
had to
homework.
prepare
here.
it, but I might not read it.
Yeah. No, I just feel like we're giving you a lot of homework here.
I'm
I mean, if
sure
there's
we
some
can
already
keep that
written,
short.
if there's some already written, you can just link us to that we could, review. Then, I would say that I'd rather have you do that and spend your time doing something else than it is
Yeah.
to rewrite somebody else's summary.
I'm pretty sure I have some slides from
Perfect.
somebody else's presentation. So
We'll just ask ChatGPT for a summary.
Exactly. There we go.
There was a reference to climate change in Massachusetts on that hazard mitigation program. And I did ask for a copy of that. And so far I haven't gotten it. I'll go back to Stephanie and see if we can't get that. And if I get it, I'll ship it off to Jennifer. And Ben, you want a copy as well?
Please.
Okay.
I really like Jennifer's summary though. Keep keep as many trees as you can, infiltrate all the water you can.
that's all it is.
Isn't that the goal?
And soil, keep
Yep.
soil, don't till it, don't, when you do septic systems, make sure there's a good 6 inches of good soil. It's actually, I don't know, I'm oversimplifying it, but that's basically what we have to do.
It needs an oversimplification.
The tree thing becomes pretty significant in this town, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Every time.
any development, they're pulling trees out, right? Or even putting in septic systems, and most of the time they're pulling trees out. So, that becomes you have to be, you should be cognizant of what that means, right? Okay, I think that's enough for now. Thank you, Jennifer, and appreciate the follow-up. Minutes for 3/27. Anybody have a chance to read them besides me? Okay. Any changes? So there was on 2 Washington, the motion to close. It says I voted on that. I actually didn't vote either the motion to close the hearing or the actual permit for work and order conditions. So that should be changed to Caulfield's abstained. And I'll obviously let you accept all the changes and clean it up. Because we got a red line version.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, so. Well, no, you sent it. Somebody sent it. Michelle sent it.
Okay.
It's okay. I read red lines all day long. I lost my chair updates. First up, just a reminder again that town meeting is on May 15th. Town elections are April 22nd. That's a Saturday at Olive Ames High School. The other thing is that we do have a date and time for rerouting the trail in Clifford Grant. It's Sunday, April 16th at 9 a.m. So if we don't get the right of entry, we'll go in through Randall Street. We'll probably headquarter initially because that's where it got released in the parking lot at OA. But the NEMBA trailer will be there, but we'll redirect people down to Randall Street and go in there. I sent everybody the instructions on how to sign up. I signed up last night. I assume Mike had volunteered to join me at the very least. So at least be the 2 of us out there. Chris Patrick is an associate member. I heard from another associate member who's out of town that weekend, but appreciated getting notified. And I know Chris will be able to get some crew together. And of course, share that with people. I've actually heard directly from other people wanting to know why the trail is closed, and I'm going to give them an opportunity to reopen the trail. So I'll make sure I send that out to them this week. So it's very easy to sign up online if you haven't done it. It's literally you click a few buttons, put your name and address, and you get to sign the waiver right online. You won't have to fill out any of that paperwork when you get to the site. Chris has got a waiver that you'd have to sign and stuff. So, okay. Any questions about that?
Is there a rain date just in case? I know I'm just looking at weather. It looks like it could possibly rain that morning, but I'm fine. I mean, I'll go out in the rain. I'm cool. I'm just making sure.
Yeah, Chris has not proposed a rain date to me. He was more looking at the temperatures, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think if it's out, just a light rain, we'll probably do it. But if it's a heavy rain, we
Okay.
probably won't.
Cool.
Environmental planner updates.
I don't have any updates, but did you want to vote on the minutes?
I'm sorry. I'll make a
So it
motion
looked
to
like Rory with edits.
right. Make a motion to accept the minutes with the minor edit.
Carol, second.
Caulfield's Carol second. Roll call vote.
Benson, I.
Carol, I.
Speedy eye.
Caulfield's aye.
Great. I don't have anything in.
Anybody else have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Spadia, Benson second. Motion to adjourn. Roll call vote.
Benson, I.
Carol, I.
Speedy eye.
Caulfield's aye.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank
you.
Record.